and welcome to Wild Heart Mustangs. I'm Danielle, and today I'm going to show you how to teach your Mustang to lead. Each step builds upon the last so both you and your Mustang can feel confident throughout the process and be successful. Join me as I take this Mustang from wild to willing partner. To start the leading process, I'm first going to establish direction. This includes sending the horse around me, stopping, and changing direction. If you checked out my last video, you saw how I teach a horse that turning his hind end towards me is not acceptable. This sets him up to understand that when I put pressure towards his hind end, he knows to face me, and then I start to build off of that. To change direction, I will step in front of the horse's driveline, point to the direction I want him to go, and add some pressure in front of the horse. Once the horse starts the change of direction, take the pressure off and allow the horse to make the turn. Then you'll stand behind the horse's driveline in between the girth area and the flank to drive the horse forward. I'm not putting much pressure on him here as I'm not wanting him to run around, just helping him understand the concept. Another way to stop them is to stand in front of the driveline but not put pressure, to ask for them to halt in place without changing direction. The next step is to just pick up the rope and hold it for the first time. Make sure the rope is at a safe distance to pick up, as bending down is a little bit of a vulnerable position at this point, and some horses can react strongly to seeing the rope move for the first time. We aren't pulling or putting any pressure here. Just holding the rope can send a horse to react. I do my best to go with the horse and not pull on the rope. The rope over the head is no big deal, and we will fix it once the horse stands still. I feel like I make a slight error here where I should have allowed him to stand still for a moment longer before flipping the rope. Although he didn't react strongly, I should have let him know more clearly that standing still is the right answer and not running from the rope. Videoing your sessions and watching them back can help you see where you can improve your technique and develop clear communication with your Mustang. I want to make sure I let him see the rope from the other eye. So here I switch to the other side. He seems pretty good, so I just kind of swing the rope and let him feel it a little bit and see the movement of it. That's it for step 2. You'll see throughout this video that I'm weaving the leading training process into other parts of the horse's training. I don't like to just focus on one thing and getting it perfect. I like to introduce the horse to concepts and let them understand the basic idea before moving on to something else. Then revisiting the concept and getting it better than the time before and adding to it. In turn, you are doing repetition and touching on a lot of different skills which will build the horse's confidence, and things seem to progress faster than mastering one thing at a time. So here I am practicing my touch it cue from the previous video, and he is completely uninterested. Here is where I say, well, if you're going to retreat and turn avoidant, then we'll move on to something else. This next step will help me to correct this avoidant behavior by not allowing him to turn his head away. Building on from the previous step where we just hold the rope, he isn't too reactive about that, and we can move forward. So I'm going to combine what we've taught him in the first step about driving forward And then when he reaches the point of the pen where he would naturally be turning, we're going to pull on his head to have him continue the turn and turn into me. Sometimes, as you see here, they will try to bite the rope in frustration to get rid of the pressure. I just wiggle the rope as much as I need to get them to stop. I then repeat the process of driving and pulling until the horse seems to understand the concept. I'm not looking for perfection here. Gradually, we work on getting softer. I only want him to walk when I ask him to, so I correct that by pulling him to a stop and facing me. Although it is off camera, he gives me a nice and soft turn in, and then here he thinks about walking off without me telling him, but decides to stop. I want to reward this, so I give him a big release and look away to see what he does. You can see here that he draws towards me and gives a big lick and chew, which shows me he is progressing nicely. This is the next session, working on getting his driving into pressure softer. You can see now when I enter his pen, he faces me. It's important to pay attention to these small behavioral changes so you can gauge where your horse is at and if they are retaining what you're teaching them. He's still slightly reactive about the rope, but he's getting better. I want to make sure I remind him that every time I get in the pen, that doesn't mean to move your feet. This helps with catching the horse without a drag on later. So here we practice the same concept as the last session, and you can see that he's much softer to the pressure of the lead rope, and his turns are a lot smoother. We previously went from working on a desensitizing exercise, trying to get that first touch where we were asking him to stand still when he felt pressure. Now we are working on sensitizing exercise with driving him and pushing him. You can see he gets a little stuck thinking he is supposed to stand still, so I just keep asking and adding pressure until I get him to move his feet. Here I go to pet his face and he walks off, so I want to stick in front of his drive line and continue to pet him until he stops. Next, we'll start the process of getting forward motion. You can see here when I give him his release, he starts to draw towards me naturally. This is when I start incorporating forward motion. If you try to pull the horse straight forward, you'll be putting in a lot more effort. The best way to do this is to get to the side of them, roughly 45-degree angle, and pull them off balance a little till they give into that pressure. It's not about the feet moving so much, as this exercise is to teach them to come forward off of the halter pressure. I'm not expecting a lot from him, just to come forward one step, maybe two if that's what it takes for the pressure to release. Here's the next session, where I'm still only asking him for one step, but I'm seeing how soft we can get it. I'm not having to put a ton of weight on the rope. I threw in this clip because it was kind of funny. I go to scratch his shoulder, and he gets kind of offended since it's a new spot, and he reaches to maybe bite the stick, but realizes it feels good and lets me scratch him. It's kind of funny. You can see he's getting really soft now. I've been asked why I use a nylon halter instead of a rope halter when I'm working with the horse. When I'm able to get the halter on and off, I do switch to a rope halter, which offers clear communication. But when I'm first putting a halter on my Mustang, I use a nylon halter because I find that a rope halter, if they step on the drag line, it can actually loosen the halter over time. And sometimes it can even fall off. Now that he is much softer, we will start asking for more than one step. We want to make sure that every time we stop forward motion, he's soft in the halter, and you can see a little droop in the lead line. I want to preface this next step as this is the very beginning of body control. I start the yield on the forehand by using the rope to help guide his feet. When we're leading, we're essentially going to be needing him to yield his haunches and forehand to pressure when we make turns. This also helps us to have another tool in our belt if we get stuck while leading and need to get them moving. I go to ask for a little more hindquarter yield and less forward motion, drop my rope, and have to regroup. It looks ugly, but it's no big deal, and these mess-ups help desensitize the horse anyways, so I just continue on asking till I get some good steps. I start yielding the shoulder using pressure on his body without the rope. He gets a little confused and frightened that I have so much energy close to him and doesn't understand what I'm asking. In these instances, it's very important to quit when you see any form of the right answer. You want to regroup and ask again. You want to regroup and ask again and reward the slightest try. He starts to understand a little bit, but I like to go back to what he knows and try to bridge the two concepts. I am very much asking for the concept here and not expecting a perfect crossover or a yield of the hindquarters. I'm just simply asking him to yield different body parts away from me when I add pressure. That is good enough for now. Remember, this is all about building on what they already know and repetition to build their confidence. So now I'm gonna start leading him when I go to turn off the camera. This step is about taking all the small lessons we've taught him and putting them together. Turning around towards his hip to drive his haunches away, and then step in front of him to draw him forward softly. Stop him by standing in front of his drive line. You can see he's really starting to draw towards me even without the pressure on the halter. First, I want to start off by saying this is the second time I let him out of his pen. Unfortunately, my camera stopped working and I didn't get the footage. It was mostly a similar experience. He was just a little sticky coming in and out of his pen, so I had to utilize some of the lessons we taught him to get his feet moving. This setup is probably the best possible setup for the first time walking out of the pen. An alleyway that is not too tight or long, connected to his pen with 6-foot fencing. You always want to use a rope that is at minimum half the distance of whatever space you are in. Make sure it's not wrapped around in a manner that you could get caught in if he pulled away. Here you can see we've worked on a lot of stuff up until this point, and I switch out his drag line for a long lunge line. I also have roping gloves on in case he does pull. If you don't have this type of setup, there are several things I would recommend. I'd say the next best possible thing to do is to have a horse dallied off of a saddle horse. If that's not possible, have someone else lead a very quiet, broke horse ahead of you and follow them. Sometimes I'll even attach 2 lunge lines together to give me that extra time to catch them if they try to run off. Also, my tips for Mustang skiing are if they do run off, try to sit down on your butt and hold on. Make sure you're looking forward and walking with purpose and confidence. Try not to stop until you get where you want to go. Once you get your horse leading well, I like to make sure I can touch the horse outside its pen and approach and pet it. This can be a new experience when a horse has more freedom to run away from you. We've covered all 7 steps of how to teach your Mustang to lead. 1. Establishing direction, where we establish communication and respect from the Mustang, telling them to move their feet where we want them to go and stopping when we tell them to. 2. Holding the rope, getting the Mustang used to seeing the rope off of the ground before we start adding pressure. 3. Driving into pressure. Drive the horse forward and into the halter pressure as the horse naturally follows the feel of the rope to turn into us. 4. Moving forward off of pressure, where the Mustang learns to find release and coming forward off of the halter pressure. 5. The start of body control. pushing different body parts away from us to establish steering while we are leading. 6. Putting it all together in a small pen. From the safety of a smaller area, we put all 5 steps together to get the horse leading. 7. Leading in a bigger space. Stepping out and trusting the process. Congratulations, you've made it to the final step, and you and your Mustang can start to have clear communication and trust each other more. Thanks so much for watching my video. If you have any questions, feel free to comment them below. Remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay up to date on my journey. And as always, stay wild at heart.